back in 1966, there were about twice as many C's as A's given out in the public schools in the United States. By the late 70s, there were twice as many A's as C's. So you have this long period during which all sorts of test scores are going down. At this very same time, grades are going up.
Is that going on at both the elementary, secondary level, and college level?
At the college level. During the entire decade of the 1980s, the percentage of A's at Yale University never fell below 40%.
So you're saying there's a great inflation going on, and there are declining test scores.
Yes. And this is part of the deception, because if people knew exactly what was happening, I don't think the test scores could have kept going down as long as they did. But everyone was told, as they saw the wonderful grades their kids were bringing home, they were told glowing things. When I was teaching back in the 1960s, I kept hearing that this was the brightest and best generation that we'd had, and I kept saying, they don't seem to be enrolling in my courses. And it was only well into the 70s before the word came out that the data showed just the opposite of what the educators were saying.
And now it would seem that a good many educators are in agreement with you when they talk about the serious straits that our American schools are in.
They agree in the sense only that this kind of talk gets them more money. And in fact, that's used as the biggest reason why we need more money. But in point of fact, the money spent on education was rising by leaps and bounds throughout the entire period during which the test scores were going down. Somewhere in the early 80s, there was a leveling off and a few little rises, but we have never come close to where we were in 1963.
What's going on, everyone? It's Dr. Quinn here today, and I wanted to do a video about the deterioration of our American schools. Now, I'm going to take some snippets from Thomas Sowell's video. As always, I always have the source of the videos in the link in the description below. And what prompted this video was because I did my video of the Inconvenient Truth series. Check it out if you haven't already, about affirmative action. And I had an interesting comment that I wanted to highlight, and I pinned it in my thing if you guys wanted to see it. It's on that video. The guy makes reference to an argument I made about how school performance by type is not necessarily because public schools are worse than both private and private schools, but he suggests that it was a bad idea for me to kind of point out that public school is the worst option compared to private and homeschooling, because I based it purely on ACT scores, and I'll have it popped up right here. And that's my fault. I should have been more clear. I mentioned that in my comment section, but I kind of want to make this video about why does Kenny despise public school? Okay, so I speak from personal experience that my mom, I went to public school up to the 3rd grade, and my mom made a very great sacrifice for me. And that was, my mom was a single mom at this time when I was going to public school, and she saw that I wasn't doing so well in public school. So my mom did a scholarship in Florida. I believe it's called Step Up for Students. And she put me in private school, a small Christian private school, right? But she saw that, hey, I did better in that school and I was smarter. And it was very more, in private school, it was a lot more self-directed than my public school, right? And some of the things that Thomas Sowell is going to talk about in this next clip is what was going on during public school. As you saw from the intro, this interview was held in 1993. This is 3 years before I was born. So Thomas Sowell, and this is why I like to reference Thomas Sowell, because a lot of things that Thomas Sowell predicted or pointed out as a problem, it's obvious now in 2023, right? So I'm going to get into this first clip, and then I can kind of dive into why I favor homeschooling more than public schooling. Let's take a look.
Social phenomenon you call affective education, and how it plays into this whole question of just how good schools are.
A great deal of time and energy are spent on things which are non-academic subjects, which are essentially psychological kinds of subjects, exercises. And this is known as affective education, as if you can somehow educate people's feelings rather than to educate their intellect. And the problem is that most public school teachers have no such qualifications, if anyone has such qualifications. But certainly they are not psychiatrists or psychologists. They have no idea of the emotional turmoil they may be stirring up in the students. And there's some evidence that that's happening in terms of medical reactions of vomiting, signs of nerves in various ways. But more than that, what they tend to do is to try to alienate the child from the parent. And I think that's the most dangerous thing they do.
How did they do that?
Well, if you read the literature, it's just astonishing how parents are depicted in the literature as people who are hung up, who have old-fashioned ideas. One of the areas in which they do this is sex education, but it's not sex education as such, because there are a whole series of kinds of education of the emotions, as they would put it, which do the same thing. And the idea is that the child is supposed to make his own decisions, and he's supposed to pick his own values on which to make those decisions. So the whole history of the human race is sort of thrown out the window, and Johnny is supposed to start and draw upon his entire 8 or 9 years of experience in the world to decide what his values ought to be.
And this is my main issue with public school, right? Is that, yes, I put most of the blame on them. I agree with the commenter that, yes, public school has most of the kids, 70%. I agree, yes. That means they're mostly at fault for our declining test scores on average, especially when in the next clip, when I show how we compete against international folks, because that's the best way to compare our education system as an as a whole, right? And I'm saying public school is mostly responsible for the decline of our test scores when we compare to global, when we go against Korea, China, Japan. I'm blaming most of the fault is on public schools. And if public schools don't want to recognize they need to change and reform how they go about educating our kid, but for some reason, anytime someone gives a critique to public school, there's always some reason. Oh, it's because we got more school kids. Okay, let's do school choice. School choice has been proven to lower the amount of public school people who go to public schools, because parents have the same amount of access and options as wealthier Americans, which is one of the points that my commenter pointed out in his comment on my inconvenient truths about affirmative action, right? And some of the things that Thomas Sowell pointed out, remember, let's look at this in context. Thomas Sowell pretty much predicted the future. 1993, Thomas Sowell pointed this out, that schools are not focused on educational stuff. They're focused on non-academic stuff. They're not focused on reading, writing, arithmetic. What's the critique in 2023 today? Same thing, the same critique. Like people like me who are I'm born in 1996, 3 years after Thomas Sowell made this radio interview, he pointed it out. Oh, they're focusing on things that's non-academic. Like what? CRT in 2023, right? And like he said, exposing your kids to this material negatively affects them. There's stats out there that kids who are exposed to CRT suffer from lower self-esteem. Suffer from this. They perform they perform worse in school after they've been exposed to CRT material. Black or white, it doesn't matter, right? Now we got social emotional learning, right? And then people want to get mad when I vote for Ron DeSantis because I want him to ban this nonsense because it's causing harm to our children. Our education system, and you saw in the intro, during the whole time between the 1960s and 1970s, we were investing more and more money into the public school system, but the test scores were still going down. But our grades are going well. Grade inflation. Now, I can't sit here and say, homeschool, private school, they don't suffer from grade inflation. But I do notice that, hey, look, on average, homeschooling kids have higher test scores than public school kids. But to the commenter's credit, he points out that, hey, public school has more kids. So therefore, their average is a lot bigger than yours. If you only have 10 students that's testing from homeschool and you have 100 students testing from public school, technically, I can mess with the data and make it seem like homeschooling kids are performing better on the SAT. And that's the point I give them. He say, yeah, he's right. Right? There's a lot more there's a lot more homeschooling. There's a lot more public school kids, 49.5 million of them in public school, while there's only 3.7 million homeschooler kids. So there's just more of a sample size, right? But if you look at it, look at the number one, the minority group. Only Asians, because Asians, statistically, it don't matter where you place Asians, public school, homeschool, private school, charter school, they perform well. So that's family culture, and I can agree with you that this is where some of the blame is on the parents as well. But you look at it, minorities are at the top. Large percentage of people who will homeschool their kids are minority students. So doesn't this back up my point when I said that public school is the worst place to put your children in as a minority person? I'm just being honest. I mean, we can play around, but hey, there's gonna be a lack of diversity in public school if this keeps up, All right. And here's another thing: taxes and cost of homeschool versus private school. Right. In 2021, the National Education Association published a study showing that American taxpayers pay about $15,000 per pupil annually in public school. That means homeschooling represents a savings of over $56 billion for taxpayers. That's a plus to the homeschooling in terms of taxes. And this is why a lot of people like me and a lot of minorities, we fight for school choice, because we're like, hey, there's just the money you spent sending kids to public school, which is arguably contributing to more to the falling of quality in the education system. Let's break that up. Let's make the class size smaller. School choice. Obviously, school choice is the answer to that, because people care about, oh my God, public schools will lose attendance. That's the point, because the teachers can't handle the 1 to 33 ratio that's going on in public schools. So let's increase the quality. Let's make the classroom size smaller, which increase the quality of education. It's a win-win for everybody. But you see all these teacher unions, they fighting desperately not to allow school choice. Why? Because these teachers unions want control over education. They understand they have a monopoly on education. And this is their conflict of interest and why they don't want to help with education reform with school choice. This is why they're against school choice. They just want control. Because the teacher unions go, our teachers are responsible for educating 70% of American students. That's a lot of power and leverage in the political world. And they leverage it. But it's also hurting the quality of education. I'm just saying, this is why I said the public school teachers or the teachers unions don't have the parents' best interest at heart. They don't have the children's best interest at heart. You saw it during COVID. They were least at risk of getting COVID during the time, and they still wanted schools to stay closed. Now they found out the detrimental effects of COVID. Now they want to sit here and say, oh, we were against the closing of schools. Lying in your face. But hey, I digress. Let Thomas Sowell explained in this next clip about how less money could actually be the path to a better education. Let's take a look.
The decline, the deception, the dogmas. Talk about some of the dogmas that you feel are driving American education.
Well, one of the dogmas is the notion that you have to feel good about yourself. And I think nothing so epitomized this for me as a study of mathematics given to 13-year-olds around the world. And Koreans came in first, Americans came in last. And one of the questions that were asked these kids was, are you good at math? 23% of the Koreans said yes. Something like 68% of the Americans said yes. And so American kids felt good about themselves, but they didn't know any math. Another study was done of 12th graders in Japan to see if they liked math. The 12th graders in Japan disliked math more than the 12th graders in the United States, and probably for good reason, because it was probably hard at math. But the Japanese don't worry themselves about whether their 12th graders like math. They worry
themselves. Or feel good about
That's
themselves.
Right. They don't care. The fact is, when you come out of there, you're going to know a certain amount of stuff. And if you don't do that, your parents are going to be on you.
Is there a balance to be achieved? That is, helping students feel good about themselves and learn at the same time? Or is it either or, Dr. Sowell?
I do not believe that there are free lunches in education or anywhere else.
And it's hard work.
That's right. And I think that's part of it, too. A lot of these programs are really a substitute for hard work by the teachers. I mean, when I think of the teachers I had, they could not have cared less whether I felt good about myself. They didn't ask me, how did you get to school? Did you walk these 15 blocks from home? Or did you have money for the trolley? They couldn't have cared less. They wanted to make sure I had better have my homework when I got there, and it had better be right.
Are you putting most of the responsibility here on the teachers themselves? What about the parents?
The parents have their responsibilities as well. On the whole, the parents, I think, turn out a lot better than the education establishment. The education establishment is very good at blaming everything on parents and seizing upon this example and that example. But the cold fact is that for a period of decades, the parents and the public have been pushing the schools to have more academic material, and the schools have been pushing in non-academic directions. And by and large, the schools have been winning, that more and more fancy fads and gimmicks have been coming into the schools. Very often people say, the Catholic schools do so much better with so little money. And I've come to think that really I don't want to take anything from the Catholic schools. But I think the fact that they have less money may be one of the reasons why they're doing so well, because they cannot afford these expensive gimmicks and fads.
I wholeheartedly agree. And this is one of the reasons why I'm for homeschool, right? Homeschooling, I think the average cost for homeschooling is $600 with all the materials, all the educational materials. I know because I spent a good fortune with my son on Kumon stuff. If you don't know what Kumon is, I'll probably leave a link in the description or show a picture of it. But my son has, like, for 2-year-olds, this little homeschooling thing that we walk through with him, right? And this is one of the reasons I homeschool as well. And here's a common critique about homeschoolers too, and I'll admit this in the video, that homeschooling parents are more likely to come from homes with educated parents and higher incomes, which is true about my situation with me and my wife. My wife has a bachelor's degree. I'm a college dropout, but as you can see from what I have here, I read a lot of books. I'm very educated on a lot of topics that I speak about. So my kid is going to have a very high quality education, regardless if I homeschool him or send him to some other school. My kid has an inherent advantage because I am his father. That's something I want parents to brag about. My kid has an inherent advantage because I am their father. Imagine that. And this is a lot of what Asian parents do to their kids. This is how I found out about Kumon. I saw Asian parents doing this. I was like, oh, what material are you doing? Oh, interesting. And I did the same thing. And this is the argument I said public school should have with. This is my argument against public school. Public school don't look out in the competition and see, hey, how can we give a better service to our students? No, they go, we got a monopoly here. We got 70% of the student body. We don't need to change for no one. And this is the problem that a lot of parents have with public school, is that when parents like me try to give feedback to the school boards, they go, yeah, whatever. You take us or leave us, right? Because they don't suffer any consequences for parents taking out their students out of public school. Actually, the parents have a double penalty for removing their kids out of public school, because our tax dollars still go to the public school and we pay extra on top of that by sending our kids to private school. And this is the flawed logic of people saying that, oh, if you want kids to have a better education, stop pushing school choice and just pay out of your own pocket. No, we pay public school already out of our property tax. And all we saying is, hey, the property tax is coming from my household. I rather it follow my child than just go directly to an institution that my kid is not using. What sense does that make? That's like me paying a bill on a service that I'm not using. You see the flaw in the logic of these people who are anti-school choice? They don't want you. They want to be like, oh, if you want to pay for private school, pay out of your own pocket. But they don't want to admit that where the taxes come from. It don't come out of the sky. I pay into that. I pay into public school. And all I'm saying is, hey, since we pay about $15,000 per kid in public school, let's take some of that and allow me to use it for a private school, homeschool, right? Give us more options, because what we doing here, based on the last clip you saw with Thomas Sowell, is we're chasing fads, dogma, and that's what it is. It's just dogma. A parent is more likely to recognize that, damn, we're failing at school. Let's try something new. Who's more resistant to change? A public school or a private? A public school or a private school? A public school. Sorry, right? Homeschoolers. This is why I like homeschooling, because I have the ability to customize the education for my kid. I'm gonna teach my kid about stoicism. Those are the values I'm gonna infuse into the education. I could teach my kid, hey, you want to do coding, son? I have a coding book right there because of my profession. I say, hey, let's go. We're gonna learn how to code at 5 years old, son. You don't think that's a big advantage I'm giving my kid? But that's the flexibility I have as a homeschooling parent. But in public school, it just you cater to the lowest denominator, and that's a flaw in the system. Yes, private school initially filters for higher educated people, higher income people, and that's why they tend to have better results. But that's more on the family. But if I'm here saying, hey, I'm trying to increase the overall quality of education, wouldn't school choice be the natural answer? Because you don't want income to play a factor into whether your kid has a good education or not, right? But these public school people who advocate for public school, their main argument is, oh, let's just throw more money at the public school. When during the 1960s, 1970s, which was earlier in the video that Thomas Sowell pointed out, we were spending more and more money in education, but the test scores were going down. Like, you can't hide from metrics. End of the day, data don't prove a narrative, but it does prove a result, and the results are in public school. Y'all need to change. It can't be, oh, we're not changing nothing about our system, but just throw more money at us. That's not a working solution. Like I said, it's like throwing money into a fire. End of the day, the results are in. Public school is the worst option, and I stand on that. Right? Especially with, like, there's no innovation, there's no competition for public school. Like I said, public school is a monopoly. Everyone knows a monopoly is bad in capitalism, but for some reason we sit here and tolerate public school having a monopoly on education when we're failing. and they're 70% responsible for that. But they don't want to change? Not a good argument, in my view. But hey, I digress. I know people are going to disagree with me, but hey, I laid out my facts. I laid out my thought processes. You guys can agree. Let me know why. You can disagree. Let me know why. I'm all for it. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. I really do appreciate you for watching to the end of the video, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.